What up, Muggles? This is Fyrebyrd, and I'm here with Stray.
Hi, everybody.
And you're listening to the Dusty Cauldron, where we talk about all things Harry Potter and the witchy world at large. Today, we're going to do another headcanon episode, and we are going to dig specifically into pairings. And so, Stray and I have both prepared a list of pairings that we love, pairings that we hate, and pairings that we are confused by. So, I'm going to kick it to you first, Stray. And why don't you tell us about a pairing that you love?
Okay, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate from certain circles for this, but a pairing that I absolutely love and read every time I come across it is Harry/Tom Riddle or Voldemort.
Tell me more.
Well, personally, I love the dynamic of how many different ways it can go. In a lot of pairings, if you read one, you've read them all. But in this match, particularly, you never know which way it's going to go. Is the Dark Lord going to turn good, or is Harry going to go dark? And then how is this going to work? Is this going to turn into a dead dove fic, or is this going to be a genuine match?
Valid. I want to dig more, but for our listeners who may not know it, can you define dead dove fic?
A dead dove fic is essentially a very dark ending. There's no happiness to this. This is not happy whatsoever. You kind of get to the end of it, and you're just filled with all this angst and darkness. And it goes kind of like the end of a horror film almost.
Okay. So, like, if I wanted to have a really good cry, I might want to search for a dead dove fic.
More like if you want to curl up into a corner of your room and just ponder how dark the universe can be. Kind of like murdering puppies, almost.
Oh my god.
Dead dove fics are not for the light of heart.
I'm glad that we're on headphones because my dog's in the room and I don't want him to hear that.
Well, mine did, but they're used to horror movies playing in the background, so they're okay.
Okay. So I've got a question then. When you typically will like seek out Harry and Tom fic, does it involve time travel or is there still like a significant age disparity between the characters?
Sometimes it does involve time travel, and sometimes it doesn't. Usually, if there's a age discrepancy or something, it involves the Horcrux that's specifically in the diary. So the diary has no memories going forward.
Gotcha. Okay. So I, like, when we were doing the prep work and you had mentioned this one, I got, like, a little, like, yuck in my yum, and it was just a little bit thinking about, like, 74-year-old Voldemort and 17-year-old Harry. Is that common for that combo? Or is it typically not that?
Typically it's not that, but it does pop up occasionally, but so does pretty much every other pairing in the world.
I mean, that's fair. We're going to dig into some weird ones as we move through this list today. I'm honest with you. This one's not it for me, but I really appreciate, like, perspective. And so is there any, like, I know you were saying there's a good variety, but is there any one, like, trope is the wrong word, but like particular direction that they might take that you find interesting?
One interesting take that I've always particularly loved is when it goes wildly AU.
Okay, yeah.
Which is alternate universe. And because of the way that it can change, personally, I love the ones where Harry goes dark instead, because it's such a difference from the way the original story goes.
And I think sometimes feels like the more realistic from a psychological perspective, because to go from where he is at the beginning and where he ends at the end, psychologically with no therapy doesn't really track for me.
Well, actually, I think it tracks more that Harry ended up where he was, simply because of the manipulation going on Dumbledore's end.
Yeah,
being self-sacrificing and for the so-called greater good rather than looking out for himself in any way. In pretty much every where Harry goes dark, he has to stop that and start looking after himself. Which
so weirdly
is the exact opposite of everything he's raised to be.
Yeah, like weirdly more mentally healthy, but then he becomes like demented. Yeah, like I sort of get that it makes sense for him to end up there because of the manipulation, but then at the same time, like I have a hard time buying into the idea that this emotionally abused and victimized child would buy into the concept that he is the hero. And so that's where I like struggle with psychologically the series making sense.
He never sees himself as a hero. He never sees himself as a hero throughout the series. But that's because you're associating the word hero with it. He just sees himself as being less. He's less important. He's less worthy. So it's right for him to sacrifice himself for others because they are worth more.
For the final act, that makes sense to me. But for the, like, throughout where he's like, I have to take care of this. I can't tell people about it to get help. I'm the only one that can solve it. That seems very, like, I think I'm the hero vibes to me.
Because a lot of people in that situation, when they're fawning, they don't realize the arrogance that goes into that thought process. Because in order to have that thought process, you first have to think that you can handle it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And until someone points that out, most of the time they don't realize that they have that. Oh, so I actually think I can handle this. But when they stop and go, no, I don't think I can actually handle this, that's when you can actually get them to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know I've had to have people point that out for me in my own issues and everything, where they're just like, so you really think you can handle this then? Because your behavior so far is telling everyone, okay, I think I can handle this. No, I didn't mean that at all. Back up, please help me.
Fair enough. Okay, so if we had a listener that was like, oh my gosh, I don't understand this pairing at all, like what would be your tagline to sell it to them?
Mostly the fact that, going back, like I said earlier, you never know which direction that this pairing is going to go, and has a lot of dichotomy of good versus evil in it, of Harry himself. And how he goes in and he has to question his own morals, what he's willing to sacrifice, what he isn't willing to sacrifice, what lines he's willing to cross for himself, for others, for the world at large, and what this all means. And that's just him going dark and versus pulling Tom to the good side.
Okay.
Or creating their own side in the middle, which has happened before.
Interesting.
Where Voldemort becomes an entirely different entity because the Horcruxes split. Because the Horcruxes split, where, like, let's say the diary becomes its own entity versus the one that comes out of the cauldron in book 4.
Oh, okay, interesting.
So then Harry and, for clarity's sake, Tom become their own side in the middle against Dumbledore and Voldemort.
Oh, okay. See, I think I would read that story. But then, does that mean in that story that Ginny died?
Times. Sometimes, and sometimes they work a way around it and come up with a completely different way to get him his own body.
Okay. Interesting. If you have a link to one that is like that, where the person that he's in the relationship with is the Tom from the diary, and like the other Voldemort still exists, like, please send me the link. I'm actually kind of interested to read how that plays out.
I will have to go through my extensive list, because it actually is a kind of popular pairing, and try to find that specific one.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, it has a lot to do with morality in this particular pairing, of what you're willing to forgive, what you're not willing to forgive, and so on and so forth. What lines you're willing to cross, what you're not willing to cross. It's very much a dichotomy of good versus evil.
That's very interesting. I like that. So my pairing, I don't know if it has as much to mention, but the one that I really love to read is Fred and Hermione, sometimes called Fremione, but I don't like that, so I just say Fred and Hermione. I think it has a good...
Yeah, those names don't go very well together.
Yeah, they just don't mesh, and that's okay. I think it's got a good balance of, like, humor and seriousness between the two of them. I think that they would probably argue in a more playful way than her and Ron, like if this was an actual pairing that played out in canon. But they're a good, like, counterbalance to each other. Because particularly between the twins, like Fred seems to be the one that takes the jokes just a little bit further every time. Like George is the more balanced and wears the line for humor. And so if
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So I think if you're looking for maintaining that level of balance when going into a romantic relationship, Fred would need someone more serious to balance out the knowing where the line is. And Hermione needs someone to help lighten up a little bit. Not to say that she's not fun, but like she can get very in her head because she's so academically focused. And so I think she'd need someone to pull her out from that occasionally. She also, to me, reads as having anxiety, and I think that when you have anxiety and you're paired with someone who is funny, it's very helpful.
I would agree with definitely Fred being a better match for her than Ron, simply because Hermione has a lot of respect for the twins. It's simply in the magic that they produce and the work that they put into it, even if it's not school inclined. She really does respect hard work.
Definitely. And like she, despite having issues with some of the things they've done, like actually takes the time during the series to point out like this is very good magic, with the daydream charms, which I think for me was the moment I started shipping Fred and Hermione, because I was just like, oh, I can see it. I think they're both just very smart and inquisitive people. And I think it would mesh really well over time. Because something that we don't always get when we read fanfics, unless you get with like a writer who really wants to do a robust plot, is to see what it looks like when it's in the happily ever after, right? Like when you're just living that married life or doing whatever. That's where I think we would get the meat and potatoes of how good Fred and Hermione are together and how they play off of each other's strengths and just have a really healthy relationship. And that's my favorite version of fanfic of them to read. It's like post-war Fred and Hermione.
Exactly. And I think that this is a pairing that wouldn't be afraid to sit down and talk out issues that they might have going on. Not necessarily with each other, but just of what's going on in general around them. Like a common married person problem. I'm not married, so throw one at me.
Someone forgot to refill the toilet paper roll.
Okay, these two, I have a feeling that would probably sit down. Okay, what's a way we can stop this from happening again?
After Fred replaced the toilet roll with something that's not toilet paper. Yes, I agree.
Yes, there's definitely has to be some humor into it, but they would definitely sit down and be like, we need to stop this from happening. Rather than I feel with Ron and Hermione, who would just blame each other until one finally stepped up and went, fine, I'll take care of this.
Yeah, I feel
like that.
Go ahead.
I feel like it would be just very toxic and blame game and just wouldn't end well in the long run.
Yeah, I feel like in a Ron and Hermione pairing, Ron would be like, well, the woman always replaces it. My mom always did that. Why should I do that? And then Hermione would do it, but like every single time that she put the toilet paper roll on, she'd get a little bit madder.
Yes, and until it eventually blew up in everybody's face. This isn't to bash on Ron at all. He's his own person and is great in many ways. I just don't think he's right for Hermione.
Agreed. I don't think that they should have ended up together. And in fact, in most episodes we don't cite the author, but I am going to cite her here. J.K. Rowling even said that Hermione and Ron shouldn't have ended up together. She said after she ended the series, she wished that she had put Hermione and Harry together. And that makes more sense because then Ron can go be with someone who's going to want that like parental type role because he definitely wants a caregiver, and Harry doesn't end up dating his mom.
Agreed with that. Agree with everything in that, except for I am not personally a fan of Hermione and Harry.
Really?
I feel like that was such a sibling-like relationship, especially, I know we're mostly discussing books here and fan fictions particularly, but when it comes to the movie, in that moment when Dobby is dying, and he looks at Hermione for the answer. I feel like that is such a sibling connection right there versus a romantic one.
Interesting. I don't read it that way. I almost put Harmony as my favorite pairing. I like to read that a lot. I feel like
I
I
feel
need
there's
to
just like
sit.
a dynamic shift in on a harmony.
Yeah, I think I need to sit with that. And maybe that'll be something I come back to in a new episode, because I'm like, I see where you're coming from. I just read things differently. And like the movie plays into it, right? Like the stuff in the tent could read as sibling, and then you play it in the movie and I'm like, oh, that can really read as romantic. I'm gonna do some self-analysis on that and get back to you.
I think part of the reason why I identified with it so strongly as a sibling relationship is because I have an older brother. And so it was easy for me to go, that's exactly what I would do with my brother here. That's exactly how I would react to my brother here.
Okay. I can see that.
It just, I identified with it very much so.
Yeah. I wonder if like the age of the sibling makes a difference, because so I have a younger brother and their interactions didn't read as sibling to me, except for the in book 4 where like she smacks him over the head for thinking he's a chosen one. Like, yeah, I probably would have done that to my brother.
That is very sibling right there. Like, me and my sister are still not allowed to sit next to each other or across from each other at dinner tables, okay? And we are plenty old enough that should not still be a thing, but it definitely is. Like, my mother will not allow it at family dinners.
That's
She'll
hilarious.
go, no, you two will kick each other underneath the table. Separate now.
Nice.
So, yeah, and plus the outright refusal of Harry in book 4 to get in between Ron and Hermione during that whole blow-up, and just multiple blow-ups that these two have, just really reads very much as a sibling relationship, because, like, if my sibling gets into an argument with each other, because I have a sister and a brother, I'm not getting in the middle of that. But if my sister gets into an argument with her husband, or my brother gets into an argument with his wife, I'm going to sit there and be like, okay, let's go.
Tell me you're not the oldest sibling without telling me you're not the oldest sibling. Because if my siblings get into a fight, I am in it and I'm refereeing.
Exactly. I'm definitely the baby. But so, like if they get into it, because they are much closer in age to each other than I am to either one of them.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, for me, I'm just like, y'all sort this out yourself. I'm not getting dragged into this, because then you both are going to turn on me. No, it's not happening. You're on your own.
Okay. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree for now on Harmony. But let's circle back to Fred and Hermione. I was trying to think of, like, how I would sell this to someone who didn't like the pairing. And I couldn't come up with a good, like, tagline for it. Because honestly, if someone was like, oh, that's terrible, I'd be like, well, you're stupid. You should read it anyway.
I think the tagline for it would simply be the dynamic that you have between learning how to relax from such a high-stressed, super anxious, and then that appreciation also for that more laid-back laughter.
Mm-hmm. But the ability to, like, be serious and do research, because Fred has that. Mm-hmm. I feel like for me, this is an example of, like, a very emotionally healthy and mature pairing. And so, like, if someone is going to fan fiction just because they want to read something angsty, like, yeah, this one's not it. You're not going to like it.
I feel like this pairing in particular is very much where childhood and adulthood get to meet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because Fred gets to bring a lot of that childhood laughter that we need in the dark moments of our life, where we have to relearn how to laugh and pull those happy memories forward again.
Mm-hmm.
And Hermione has a lot of that. I mean, it's very painfully obvious that she spent a lot of time, like, alone. Especially, you can see how hard she latched on to Harry and Ron in the first book. It's painfully obvious that she didn't have anyone in the quote-unquote normal world.
Yeah, like, her very independent childhood shows.
She puts all her self-worth into what she can do. and how she can succeed. Mm-hmm. Which causes a lot of anxiety. Well, I feel like Fred teaches her it's okay to fail.
And, like, the fun in the mess of it.
Exactly. Because, I mean, when you're inventing something, you're going to fail 99 times before you succeed that one time. Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm saying. They are, like, perfectly matched to each other. Mm-hmm. Let's transition to some people that maybe aren't perfectly matched for each other. What is a fan fiction pairing that you hate?
Just specifically in fan fiction, because I think we both agree that neither one of us likes Ron and Hermione.
Yes.
I'm going to get so much hate for this. I'm already feeling the attacks coming for me. I hate Drarry.
Okay, it's so overdone, but, like, walk me through your hatred.
I hate it because it's so overdone, and it's very easy to see how, like, the second you see that it's a Drarry fic, you know how the pairing's going to go. Mm-hmm. You know how the story's going to go. It's a rivals to lovers thing, and those always go the same way. It's not like an enemies to lovers or even a friends to lovers story. There's only so many twists and turns you can take in a rivals to lovers story.
I don't know if I agree that there isn't an element of enemies to lovers in it, but I do agree with the predictability of the plot.
I just get bored with it. Mm-hmm. And it's not in the typical, like, lighthearted, okay, I just read this horrible, angsty, dead duck fic, now I need something lighthearted to restore my faith in humanity. But it's still very, and it's very boring on top of that. It's kind of just like, okay, they get into a situation where they're forced to understand each other. Now they understand each other. They realize they're not so different, but they have all these other differences too. And now we can get together, and I'm bored with it.
So the one positive I think I would give this pairing is that it having so many stories shows some level of, like, mainstreaming and making more acceptable the concept of, like, two men in a love story. And for that, I give it all the snaps, right? But the actual pairing itself just makes me insane. And I'm like, it says so much psychologically about a person that this is the one that they gravitate towards. Like, tell me that you are afraid that if someone knew all of you, that they would not love you. And so you go read these stories where, like, it's the ugliness of the two, like, butting against each other and then falling in love, because you just want to find someone who's going to love all of the things about you that you think is ugly. Like, cool. Talk about that in therapy. Like, stop reading this stupid pairing.
I don't know if I like how you just described that, considering my previous favorite pairing.
No attacks meant.
Just throw me under the night bus there.
Oh, God. I didn't think about it like that. But, okay.
Just like, obviously Stray's at war with herself over there. So
That's okay. That's okay. We're all at war with ourselves for something.
Okay, but, yeah, it's just, I agree with you there, and it's kind of like, okay, you see that, you're not sure if you can be accepted, so obviously you come to this rivals versus lovers story, into lover story, where they see all parts of each other and still learn to accept each other through that. They see all the ugliness of each other, because, I mean, it's hard to get more ugly than book 6.
Yeah, that's true.
There were straight up murder attempts in that one.
Yeah, and I'm like, literally, if you have the pairing in book 6, then it's like domestic violence on top of everything else. Like, it's dark.
It needs to either be completely AU, and if it's AU, it's a pairing I can get behind. Because, I mean, that obviously the characters are wildly different, and it's not rivals to lovers anymore.
Yeah, but, like, at what point do you take it so AU that it doesn't even make sense that that's the names of the characters, you know?
Well, at one point, honestly, some of the AUs I've seen, where I was okay with the pairing, were when they were never rivals to begin with, because for one reason or another, Harry got sorted into Slytherin and was more Slytherin in nature going forward. So, like, there was never that automatic, I don't like you from Diagon Alley.
Interesting. So if you were put in a position to try to sell this pairing, do you think you could do it?
If it was AU, sure.
Okay.
But
Go ahead.
oh, sorry, I was going to say, but if it was not AU and you were going straight forward from the story, either during the canon story or post story where it's like healing after the war or whatever, I don't think I could do it.
That's fair. I have like a mixed relationship with AU because like if it's an AU that still has ties to canon plot points, like I can digest it. But if it's so AU that it's like they're not even at Hogwarts or whatever, I struggle with it because I'm like, at this point you just wrote a different story and named your character the same, but it's not actually tied at all. I've read a few Wolfstar ones that do that, and I'm like, I enjoy it just for like the love story, but like this is not Remus and Lupin. This is two guys, one working at a coffee shop, one working at a record store, and you just threw these names on it.
I feel like for those stories, there are some that you can do that with, simply because you have to have those characters. The writer has to really know these characters, so they have to have them completely locked in order for those to work. But I feel like for you, that just means that you really like the atmosphere of canon, and you like how that works. You need the magic and everything else that comes with it. Because for you, that ties in super strongly to who these characters are and how they developed.
Definitely. I think it makes a big difference for me.
Which makes sense, because if you think about it, in canon and everything, it makes so much sense for this world to have its own culture and everything else behind it, instead of just being an offshoot of Britain.
Yeah. I was talking with a friend about the whole idea of like trying to contextualize this within actual Britain at the time, because he's like an Anglophile, and because I was getting pretty fired up over the lack of diversity in the characters, and he was drilling it down to like what the census data was in Britain at the time. And I'm like, I mean, you're not wrong, but this ruins the story. Like, I don't want to hear any of that. I'm not going to share any of the data points because that's how much it bugged me.
Because the data points when it comes to census isn't the problem. The problem is this world has been separate and from Europe since the Statue of Secrecy came out. It's going to develop along its own lines. It's going to have its own culture. I mean, just look at the U.S. How many times have we understood each other simply because of location?
Yeah, valid.
Okay, people in the North are not going to understand people on the South in certain concepts. Same with people on the East versus people on the West.
It's true.
Don't even get me started on in the middle. No one understands that. Okay, and we aren't even separated by this order that you can't talk to each other.
Yeah, it's literally just geography. Yeah.
Okay, and so like even if these people are right next to each other, they are so separated. I mean, Mr. Weasley didn't even know what a rubber duck was.
What is the purpose of a rubber duck? It's joy, Arthur. That's the purpose. Joy.
Actually, it's so that you can figure out advanced coding, but...
What?
Yeah, it's called the rubber duck solution. Coders and everything, when they run into a problem, they get out a rubber duck, and then they explain the problem to them, to the duck, and go on and so forth, work their way through it, and it's just like talking to another person, and usually they can figure out the problem.
That is a great 2022 answer. I don't feel like that is a great 1994 answer. When did he ask for the purpose of rubber duck? It would be probably
I do it all the time when I'm writing. I literally will bring out like a stuffed animal or something, and I'll be like, okay, this is the problem I'm having.
I love that. I have never heard this before. I might have to invest in a rubber duck. But, okay, so we hate Drary. My pairing that I hate is Snary, so Snape and Harry. Similar reasons, but then with an extra sprinkle of feels like pedophilia and feels weirdly like incest. Like, so yes, Snape is not related to him, but like his tie-ins with his mom just make the pairing feel incestuous to me. So that really gets under my skin. But again, it is a big, healthy serving of, I don't like the trope of enemies to lovers.
I can agree with that mostly because I feel like Snary leads heavily into dead dove territory, and I usually try to avoid dead doves simply because I don't like how they make me feel when I read them.
Yeah. I also don't like how it's like an abuser, even though, based on what we have in canon, Snape was also abused, but he took that abuse and became an abuser rather than like getting some therapy.
At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own actions.
Yeah, exactly.
Good or not. Hey, he is a true gray character. I will not say he is evil, and I will not say he is good. He is firmly a true gray character, and I love him for that.
Yeah,
but
he gives us lots to sink our teeth into. But it is in this pairing, an abuser getting with an abuse victim, and I don't feel like it's ever in a healthy way.
Exactly. You would have to change this to wildly AU for this pairing to work out. And even then, you would have to completely divorce Snape from his feelings from Lily.
Yeah.
Whether they are friendship or otherwise.
Yeah. Because even if
because there are some people argue that he only had friendship for her. Which, okay, you can argue that point. Playing along with it, you would still have to divorce him from these feelings for this pairing to not feel icky.
Gross, yeah. Because there still would be this really unhealthy underlying thing that drew him to Harry in the first place. And it also would be weird for Harry to be drawn to him, considering, like, all we get in canon is that it's verbal. I feel like it's implied that there is physical as well. But so this child that is being abused by Vernon then turns around and wants to get with an adult that is abusive. Like, it could happen. Like, without therapy, it absolutely could happen. But I don't want to read about it. I want to. Exactly. I'd rather read a story of him going to a therapist to talk about why am I attracted to this man than actually like trying to go after him.
Exactly. If you had this pairing, you would have to have, in order for it to not feel like an abuse victim going to another abuser, it would have to be to where Snape somehow found out about the abuse and completely treated Harry different from that point on. Like, complete change of behavior.
Potentially, yes. But then even then, I think there's some yuck to it. Because I have read fics that take that route. But it ends up being this, like, oh, I love him because he saved me, like, type approach. So then it's still unbalanced and unhealthy.
It's still very much a heavy power imbalance, yes.
Yeah. I think you have a really, like, key point, though, that it has to be, like, some plot point has to show up in the story that, like, shows a divorce from any, like, desire for Lily or, like, even friendly thought. Like, he has to, like, forget she existed for there even to be an inkling that maybe this is okay. Just because his relationship with Lily was so unhealthy, and that's so much baggage to be bringing into the relationship with Harry.
I remember one fic I read where it was a person that got reborn into the story as Harry's older sister. And they did an excellent job of keeping Snape in character, true to character, divorcing him from feelings for Lily, and still getting with our OC.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It had something to do with Heather. Like, the main character's name was Heather. But there are a few fics that use that as a main character's name, so I will have to look it up specifically for you.
Okay.
But they did an excellent job of it, and because the character was reborn, you're not having this creepy age and power dynamic thing going on.
Yeah, which is helpful because it yucks my yum. Which is interesting. Like, I feel like it comes up in a lot of pairings, like a major age difference, like to the point where even if they were adults when they got together, it's still kind of like uncomfortable how big the gap is. And so I just wonder, like, what does that say about fanfic writers? And I'm saying this as someone who's written a lot of fan fiction. Like, what does it say that, like, that pairing is happening so often? Not that pairing, but that type of pairing.
I think part of it is because of the weight that is put on our main characters, specifically in this fandom.
So you don't really see them as
They literally
children?
have the weight of the world on their shoulders.
Yeah.
So I feel like someone that's mentally at their age can't handle that, and it still is even more of a power imbalance than if they were with someone older who can understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. I see where you're coming
So
from.
I think it's more mental maturity versus physical maturity.
Okay. So, I can't think of a line to sell this because I wouldn't. Like, if someone was like, do you think I should read this? I'd be like, absolutely not. You should not. Don't do it. In fact, find a way to filter it out of your search results.
I feel like it's literally depends on how good of a writer is the person writing it. Can they manage to keep him in character and still divorce him from his feelings from Lily? Are they capable of doing that? Because, like I said, I read that one fic. If they are capable of doing that, and Harry goes through stuff that makes them more mature, because, again, weight of the world.
Yeah. I get it. And, like, I don't think any of that would do it for me. But I do feel it's important to clarify that, like, I would not put judgment on anyone that is going to read that as, like, their comfort pairing or really enjoys that pairing. I'm just like, I can't find a context that would make that pairing okay for me personally.
Exactly. Like, what if, okay, time travel wise, like, Harry goes through the entire canon story and then gets sent back in time to 11 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then Snape gets divorced from his feelings for Lily, completely new because of events especially with Harry having a new understanding of Snape from the beginning. This is going to change entire dynamics.
Yes, but then the ick is on Harry, right? Because it's like, I know all of these things, and it's all very damaging, and I know where it's headed, most likely, and I know that it's rooted ultimately in these feelings for my mother, and I'm attracted to that?
No, like, the attraction wouldn't start right away, because that's how the story works. Like, it has to go forward through. Like I said, if the writer was able to divorce Snape from the feelings from Lily.
Okay.
Would you be okay with the pairing then?
I don't know. I guess I would have to see how it played out in the aging, but then I feel like there would be things that Harry would have to forget in order to start developing feelings of attraction, and so then it starts to break for me, right? Because the premise is that it becomes acceptable because Harry's going into it with foreknowledge.
Exactly, because when you add in foreknowledge like that, the character automatically becomes OOC, which is out of character.
Yeah, like, extremely.
So it really becomes very divorced from canon.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I just like canon more than I thought I did, which is kind of funny.
Because I'm over here with all these AUs and how the character manipulates things, which is why I love fan fiction in the first place.
Right? I like to see how people have come to know the characters differently and, like, what different futures they envision for them. But apparently I am discovering that I have a line of acceptability of AU that I did not know I had until we started having this conversation.
Meanwhile, I'm over here just like, completely turn that character completely 180 over there.
You're like, line? What line? Can we go deeper?
How far can we go with this? So obviously in our friendship, I am the Fred and you're over here being Hermione. Got it.
Yep. Okay. I'm okay with that, though. I can live with that. That's not insulting. Okay. So let's talk about the ones that we have encountered that are just, we don't get it. It's very confusing. What is the most confusing pairing for you?
Okay, when you first told me about this, I honestly did not think I was going to be able to think of anything. So because I've been in the fan fiction world for so long, I thought I had become immune. And then I found it. I want to preface this, but I wanted to go into this series. I wanted to come at this seriously. Yes, that was a Harry Potter pun for those listening. I wanted to come at this not going after just the easy crack pairings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking, I was going for it, and I couldn't find anything. And then I found it.
Before you tell
slapped
us,
me in the face.
Before you tell us, define a crack fic.
A crack fic is a wild pairing that you would not have thought came up, like, let's say, Dumbledore and Hagrid.
Okay.
That you just kind of look at that and you have to stop and go, what? Huh? How? Or even characters that have not even been in the same vicinity of each other, like, let's say, Petunia and Tom Riddle.
Oh my god.
Crack pairing.
Yeah, that's a crack pairing for sure.
Never been in the same vicinity of each other.
I'm like, do I need to change my answer for most confusing? But okay, tell me yours.
I had to check, and I discovered that the writer had not written it humorously.
Oh.
Had written it down seriously, like this was a serious pairing. I'm going to get you invested into this story and rip your heart to shreds like fanfic writers do. Don't lie, you know we both do it.
Yes, we do.
And it was Vernon and Harry.
Okay, that's got so many layers of what the fuck.
Thank you. I couldn't even, read the summary without my vision going out of whack. I was just completely confused, going, how? What? Who?
Ugh. And see, so to me, I want to check in on the author and be like, who hurt you? Because this reads as, like, something happened where you were taken advantage of and you are processing that out through this fic. And I'm like, you good, bro?
But obviously it was wildly AU.
Yeah, yeah.
Going into it, I mean, you have to, at one end, Vernon, a man stuck to his beliefs. You gotta respect at least that. If you hate everything else about this man, which I fully support, you gotta respect that he stuck to his beliefs. Voldemort could have walked right up to that door, been like, I am Lord Voldemort, and that guy would have looked back and gone, sounds like you don't have a real job.
Where's your nose?
Like, man would have had hold no punches back.
Yeah, that's valid.
Okay, I don't care how much else you hate the man, you gotta admit that he sticks to his beliefs.
This is true. Out of curiosity, how old was Harry in the fic?
I did not look.
Okay, that's fair. It would have been traumatizing.
I thought I had seen it all. And I found out I was wrong.
Well, I know, like, in some fics, they, in the description, particularly if it's a fic that's gonna have an age disparity, it'll say, like, right away, like, oh, time travel involved, or, oh, like, the person was at the age of majority, or whatever. So it was possible that you might have known, but it's okay that you didn't, because I wouldn't have delved deeper on that story either.
Honestly, I was like, okay, I found my, weirded out pairing, because I'm so weirded out by this that I can't even go further. Other than seeing that that's the pairing, oh my god.
Yeah, that's completely valid. Completely valid. I'm not even going to ask you to try to sell it because I don't think you should. Like, if you gave me a sentence to sell it, I would probably cut that out of the episode.
Just imagining it, I'm pretty, just like in my head, I'm still in shock.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I feel like you've definitely already topped me, but I am going to share my pairing that I'm confused by, which is Squost, the giant squid and a piece of toast. There's only a couple of them out there. I didn't even know it existed until I became friends with someone who has written one of them. This is no hate on her. She's a great girl. And I read her piece. It's not bad. Like, from an artistic perspective and from a writing perspective, she did good work. I'm just so confused by what is happening. Because it's just very weird. It's silly, but it's weird. Like, is it about a food fetish? Is it about like a fish or marine life fetish? Do squids even have emotions? I don't think they do. Also, is it squid or squids for plural squid? Like, both sound wrong.
I think it's squids.
Okay. And so, like, if they do have emotions, would the relationship would still have to be one-sided, right? The toast certainly doesn't have emotions.
It's very happy that it has toast.
Yeah.
It's its favorite food.
Toast is orgasmic.
It will raise the castle for more toast, so the house elves give it a daily offering.
It's definitely a crackfic pairing. And I'm like, it's crazy to me that more than one person glommed onto like a non-moment. I believe it's in book 4. Hermione and Harry are walking around the lake talking about the Triwizard Tournament, eating slices of toast because they can't go into the Great Hall because Harry is persona non grata once again. And then toast is thrown into the water. And that moment, and like, so they throw it in and they see like a tentacle come up and take the piece of toast. In that moment,
like Dobby has been given a sock.
Yes.
Squid has been given toast.
Yes. Like, that moment stuck so much with people that multiple people wrote a love story about it. Like, what is happening?
Okay, I will take you back to, I believe it's the 3rd movie. Draco with the apple.
Oh my god, yeah. What is that? Also, did you know that like that was not written? He just took food on set with him.
Yeah, I believe it. That happens a lot.
Oh my god. But yeah, people are obsessed with that. And I'm like, I don't get it. And I actually do think that Tom Felton is fairly attractive. But there is nothing attractive about a person eating an apple.
Yeah, I personally don't get it either. Their face is normally like very elongated at that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some people are into the just like watching people eat. Like, that's a thing.
Yeah,
it's not for
thing,
me.
yes.
I find it the opposite of that, and that maybe that's something I need to work on. But I actually think watching someone masticating food a little bit disgusting to look at.
Depends on what the food is.
I guess I don't know. I'd have to do some self diving on this as well to be like, I don't know if there is a single food that I'd be like, oh man. The way you ate that string cheese really did it for me.
Like I said, it depends. It depends on what the food is. You gotta think more like chocolate syrup, hun.
Maybe. Like, so I've read like multiple stories that have like tried to sexualize food, and I've never understood it. Like the whole asparagus thing. I feel like that has come up in multiple fics, and I believe Canon is in 50 Shades of Grey, of like, it's a turn on because it's a very phallic shape. I'm like, yeah, and then you bite the head off of it. Why is that turning you on?
It's just like you're taking it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my brain automatically went to VeggieTales, and all I could think was, who are you? Who are these people?
Oh my god. Also, like, now that I'm thinking about it, in 50 Shades of Grey, maybe the fact that the head was bitten off was what was attractive to him. Because wasn't he, like, a sadist or a masochist or something?
I did not read that series, so because of the very bad BDSM etiquette.
Yeah.
And how everything was very, very not done properly.
Yeah, it's there's lack of consent and, like, breaking all of the rules and all sorts of problems. I have read it, and it's not great. It's not great. But I think that he is, like, he's messed up. And so maybe it did attract him that he was equating it to his own junk. Because maybe he does want his junk bitten off. I don't know. Oh,
this has taken a very interesting turn that I'm sure none of the listeners were prepared for.
How did we get here? We were talking about toast.
And somehow got into biting the head off of junk.
Actually, something that while like trying to write down what I wanted for each pairing that I realized while prepping for this episode is just like how much of this points to like psychological healthy things and psychologically not healthy things, and that like I actually think fan fiction is a way that like a very dedicated fan processes like therapeutic information. And I don't know that every author realizes that's what they're doing when they're doing it, but I believe that is what it's actually happening.
Get so much of the psychology and mental health of an author off of their work, fan fiction or not. Mm-hmm. You can see so much going on through that. Like just taking Harry Potter into context. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The fact that the author never equated Dumbledore with a bad person says a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really interesting. I almost wonder if it would be a helpful tool for like as part of the intake process, if you are a fan fiction writer, to like give your fanfic to your therapist and be like, read this and we'll talk about it next week.
I don't want to scar my therapist.
But it would be a very honest way.
That I don't want to give my therapist.
Right? Like,
there's a reason I write that anonymously.
I mean, valid. There's a reason that no one will ever know my pen name. But, like, what a more honest way to be able to tell them something without ever having to say it. Like, you could just say, like, hey, we're going to need to process this shit, and I wrote it happening to Hermione Granger, so you tell me what you think about that.
It's just like, and then there's going to be a question, do you see yourself in Hermione Granger? Do I have to answer this?
Do you mean in the context of the books or in the context of this fan fiction? Because my answer changes. Like...
Exactly, and it's kind of just like some of the characters I write and the things that I do to them. I don't know, I want my therapist reading some of this stuff.
But to me, I'm like, that means your therapist needs to read it. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I put, like, you've read some of my stuff. You know, I put my characters through hell.
Yes, you put them through the gauntlet.
I sit there and I'm going, I wonder how much they can take before they break.
Valid. And you're not like a fade to black writer either, so you really get all of the torture. Because when I write, like, in the meat of the story, I'm not a fade to black person, but like when we're getting to happily ever after, I will to a certain extent like fade to black in it after I've like sort of established the path that they're going down, which actually maybe makes mine more unhinged, because then I've given you the nitty gritty of all of the painful stuff and just like a little sprinkling of the happiness, whereas you're gonna be like, no, I'm gonna put you through hell, but then I'm also gonna take you to heaven and you're gonna see every minute of it.
But at the same time, the way I usually take my characters to heaven is like, okay, you're going to die, but you're going to be happy about
it. Shout out to Ron.
Hello. Don't you love my references there?
Yes, that was a good one.
Yeah, but yeah, seriously, that's how most of my fics go. And again, very glad that no one knows my pen name here. But, yeah, you're going to die, and you're going to be happy about it. It's going to be very bittersweet. Just going to cut open these wounds on my readers' hearts and then pour some lemon juice and salt in there and call it good.
Ouch. True, though. That's an accurate assessment.
Stays in there.
Well, do you have any last thoughts about pairings in general or about any of the pairings we've talked about today?
I think there's so much when it comes to pairings that you can get out of it rather than just the story itself. Like, whether you're working through a mental health episode or you're struggling with good and evil and morals in general. And there's just so much that you can pull from it just by simply moving characters around on a board.
I think you're right. So a lot of fan fiction sort of picked up this, like, they'd always have like an intro saying something along the lines of like, I don't own this, it belongs to these people, basically so they wouldn't get sued by Warner Brothers or J.K. Rowling. But something that came up in a lot of those was either like, these are just like J.K. Rowling's toys and I'm playing with them, or I'm just playing in her sandbox or whatever. But I really like that analogy for like, this is a way of like quote unquote tactile play to process a trauma or to process a grief or to process like a concept. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing happen in fan fiction. Like people are playing through thoughts that they've had or worries they've had or something bad that's happened to them, and like what's a different way that this could have gone, or what does this look like on someone else so I can see it from the outside. So like I think a lot of fan fiction writers get crap, right? Like we're all super nerds and we're super weird. I actually think that it's a community of people that are like digging into like really meaty mental health topics, and like they're doing good work for themselves.
People who say that we're just super nerds, it's just like, I hate to break it to you, but some of your favorite works that you think only the elite of society read are fanfics.
There is no original story left.
It's a fanfic.
Yeah. There's
50
only
Shades that we mentioned earlier, it's a fanfic.
Yeah,
Paradise
Twilight.
Lost,
Yeah.
fanfic.
Yep. And like it gets even like wider when you look at it. There's only like truly so many different types of plots, and then you just interchange out the characters, or you interchange out the setting or whatever. So like every story is a fan fiction of a story written 200 years ago.
Like literally a lot of the stories and everything, some of them that we even study in school are just fanfics of something else. So not just for super nerds, it's for multimillionaires.
And everybody's just a little bit of a super nerd.
Over something, at least. If you're not a super nerd for something, your life is boring.
Yes. Get a hobby and be obsessed with it, okay? Thanks. Bye.
This ad is brought to you by Wand Culture. Wand Culture is a small business spreading joy with thoughtfully carved magic wood wands. Our wands are made from sustainably sourced driftwood, reclaimed 100-year-old barnwood, and other beautiful woods from the Pacific Northwest. Unique wands dreamed, carved, and finished all by hand. Add magic and joy to your next adventure. Go to wandculture.com to find your new, one-of-a-kind magic wand, or DM us for custom orders on social media. Follow us at Wand Culture on Instagram and Facebook.
Thanks for tuning in, Muggles. If you're jonesing for more witchy goodness between episodes, you can check us out on Instagram at Dusty Cauldron Podcast. You can email us at dustycauldronpodcast@gmail.com, or you can check out our website, dustycauldronpodcast.com. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening right now if you want to hear more. And remember, there's a little bit of something for everybody in a fan fiction. You can find a pairing you love, a pairing you hate, a pairing that weirds you out. It's all there. It's a smorgasbord. And don't forget to stir whatever you've got brewing in your cauldron right now. Bye!
Bye-bye!